Welcome to the episode of Historican. Historican is a living archive documenting and uplifting the stories of the Puerto Rican diaspora. Our mission is to preserve our history, honor our elders, amplify our truth, and reclaim what has been erased. Each episode weaves together cultural memory, political insight, and some ancestral wisdom. Today on Historican, we are joined by Raquel Z. Rivera, PhD. Dr. Rivera, a scholar, singer, and songwriter, a cultural storyteller whose work bridges the worlds of music in the diaspora and social justice. Born and raised in Puerto Rico, Raquel has lived across New York City and New Mexico, exploring what it means to carry culture, memory, and identity across boundaries and borders. She's the author of Nuyorican from the Hip Hop Zone and co-editor of Reggaeton. She has released music rooted in Puerto Rican bomba, Dominican salves, and spiritual traditions that honor our ancestral connections. Beyond her scholarship and artistry, Raquel worked in reproductive justice, advocating for midwifery, doula care, and access to contraception, continuing her commitment to reclaiming and centering marginalized voices. On this episode, we dive into her journey as a creative and a scholar, her exploration of the Caribbean spiritual traditions, her reflections on the diaspora and identity, and the ways that music, story, and justice intertwine in her life story and her life's work. I am deeply honored to welcome you, Dr. Raquel Rivera, to Historican. Welcome.
Thank you. I am really happy to be here.
Well, we're just going to get right back into it and go deep. You have so many versions, so many paths that are intertwined. Part of that Boricua experience is those multiple paths and those multiple versions of identity. So how have you navigated those versions of yourself from Puerto Rican to New Yorker to resident of Albuquerque? How do you navigate all?
He flipped that whole thing of ni de aquí ni de allá to de aquí y de allá. Experimenting with Mexican traditional music. As I was here, I wrote this song that says, soy de donde me quieran. So that's where I'm from, where I'm loved. That's where I'm from. I'm loved in Puerto Rico. I'm loved in New York. I'm loved here. I wonder if I'll ever move to a place where I'm not loved and how I'll feel. But that has not been the case, thankfully. I have found beautiful people, beautiful community, family in each of those places. But it's an adjustment. I never questioned who I was as a Puerto Rican in Puerto Rico. I went to college in Providence with a lot of New York Puerto Ricans. And then I moved to New York. So it was that process of understanding how my family background in New York City had informed my growing up in Puerto Rico. I never thought about that either. My mom is a Cuban, born in Cuba, who grew up among Puerto Ricans in New York City. My dad went to New York as an adolescent. So going to New York was kind of a homecoming. I went to see the church that my great-grandfather founded in Bushwick. I was looking for my great-grandparents' graves in a cemetery in Queens. So I didn't think about it until I was experiencing it. And then coming to Albuquerque, where the Puerto Rican community is very small, where I'm raising a child, trying to convey what I bring culturally to the table, but at the same time, the context is Mexican. So it's a challenge. I'm seeing it through my mother's eyes. And at the same time, I'm trying to find my place in a land that seems like a mirror image of Puerto Rico. Like the layers, this is also something I never thought about until I got here. It's like the layers of colonialism have been very similar. There is a much, much stronger indigenous presence and visibility here, but the layers of first Spanish colonialism, then U.S. colonialism have shaped this identity and this trauma that is so different from mine, but it's parallel. So that has been an interesting journey for me, like seeing myself and my people in a different land. Yeah, similarities and differences.
And you mentioned when you said you have your mother eyes, it made me think, are you thinking from the eyes of your parents' eyes or both and your eyes as a mother as well?
Thinking my eyes as a mother, but I guess I can't help but also look at things informed by what my parents saw.
How has that journey of navigating all that shaped your sense of belonging and your sense of understanding cultural and identity?
I have had to rethink a lot. Something else that I never thought about was that I grew up as a Puerto Rican in Puerto Rico, daughter of a Cuban born mom who was in turn granddaughter of Puerto Ricans who had migrated to Cuba. So I just grew up as a Puerto Rican. And it was when I went to New York that someone said, "Oh, you're half and half." And initially I was like, half and half, but I don't know Cuba. But then I understood, okay, there's different ways of viewing the same historical fact. So I was like, okay, depending on who I talk to, it's going to be viewed differently. Okay, that was in New York that I had to rethink that. Then most recently here, my son, both his dad and I speak Spanish to him all the time. So he feels very comfortable in Spanish, but the Spanish that he speaks is Mexican Spanish. Sometimes he will throw in there a Boricua word, but he says it with all his S's pronounced, Mexican style, but he's saying words that come from my background. And we were talking and he said something about that he feels, because he said, oh, yeah, because I'm Mexican. And I said, and Puerto Rican too. And he was like, yes, but I'm more Mexican. And that was like a shot to my heart. I was like, what did I do wrong? And then I started to think, wait a minute. This is like what happened to me in Puerto Rico. If you're in a context where you're growing up informed by the people and even the land, like he says he's Mexican and New Mexican. Like he's very rooted in that. And then he has Puerto Rican ancestry. And yes, he's also Puerto Rican and Cuban. But I started understanding that it's not how I want him to define himself. This is how he feels now. I wonder if he lives in Puerto Rico at some point, or if he lives in New York at some point. Will he feel more Puerto Rican at some point? I don't, but I know that those things really depend on the context and on the moment of the life of the person. So I'm being a witness and trying not to be too, this is the way it is. Like, no, Raquel, stop, listen. What is he saying? Why is he saying it? Why does it make sense? And that whole thing about the land really explains a lot to me. People here, they call it querencia. I can't even believe that there's a word to express how you feel rooted to the land among people who are the descendants of Spanish-speaking people. And it's querencia. And I'm like, wow. And he's in this place that is still very rural. We live in the city, but this is a very rural state. And there are those rural land-based values. And his dad is a farmer. So there's a rootedness there. And the placenta that he came in is in one of his dad's plots of land. So I have to take all of that into account. But yeah, sometimes it's a shock and a learning experience.
Wow, but what an amazing, rich contextualization of that. And you give such agency to the person experiencing it.
I wanted to ask you about music and how the culture of music has had an influence on your life and mold and shape your identity. You wrote the book, New York Ricans from the Hip Hop Zone. You co-edited Reggaeton. Talk about what was it like for you and the influence of music in your life.
I come from a family of musicians. My paternal family is from Naranjito. So they were very much into and are very much into Jibaro music and boleros. So all the family parties, it was live music and people staying up all night. But as a child of colonialism, that was not cool. Why was I being dragged around plaza to see my dad playing accordion with Andres Jimenez? I was so upset. And now I'm like, oh my God, my dad played accordion for Andres Jimenez. But, when I was preteen, I was into menudo and pop music. Later, I became more of a rebel, or so I thought. And it was more about like the hair metal bands. And it was not until I was a junior and senior that then I was like, oh my God, I am the poster child of a colonized mentality. What am I doing? My family are musicians. I'm surrounded by salsa, and at the parties, people are dancing salsa. And I always turned down my dad when he wanted to dance with me. And okay, papi, now, ahora sí, please teach me. So by the time I got to college, I was very hungry to learn more about what my people were into. And my people, when I went to college, were the New York Puerto Ricans that were at the university, and they were into hip hop. And there was this connection between the Puerto Ricans and the African Americans that had been raised on the East Coast. It wasn't like two distinct groups culturally, and then of course racially there were Black Puerto Ricans and Black Latinos in the mix. But that sense of having hip hop be something that was shared among these groups of people really caught my attention. I didn't know much of the groups, I didn't understand much, but I was like, oh, this is important and I don't quite understand it and I enjoy it. By the time I went back to Puerto Rico, that was 1990. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I was like, I'll do a master's degree in Puerto Rican studies and hopefully I'll figure out which route I want to go. I noticed that the youth cultural scene had changed. There were the cocolos that loved salsa and the rockeros that loved rock music. I had been a rockera once upon a time and then had gone through my transformations. And then when I got back, those were the early days of what eventually became reggaeton. So hip hop music from the US was important. Rap music in Spanish was very important. What they called underground, then that was folks rhyming in Spanish over either dance hall beats or hip hop beats. I was like, oh my God, something really important happened while I was gone. How did this happen? And I had the fortune of having a sociology of music class with Ángel Quintero Rivera, who is one of the foremost writers about the sociology of Puerto Rican music. So I asked him also for the class, can I write about what's happening with young people and the changing musical taste? And he loved the idea. He was really encouraging. So that's how I started turning something that had been more of an enjoyable thing for me. I was like, oh, but maybe I can make this into a subject of study. I'm not sure what I want to do. I know that I love to study, so could I do this? But I quickly found out that everybody calls him Chuco, that Chuco was very special in thinking that studying popular music and to top it off, youth popular music was a valid subject of study. Other professors were like, absolutely not. This is not valid. But I had Chuco on my side. I was able to write my master's thesis about rap music in Puerto Rico and come to find out that not only were New York Puerto Ricans really into hip hop, but through Juan Flores's writings, I learned that New York Puerto Ricans had been co-creators of hip hop, which made me so giddy because most people of the older generations were like, this is not even music. What are these young people doing? And this is not Puerto Rican. What's happening with our young people, including my dad. He was trained in classical music when he went to the university. And he had been raised with jibaro and boleros. And what was this music? People weren't even singing. This was poetry. This wasn't music. Why are you saying this is music? So it felt so good to be able to argue, not only is this Puerto Rican because young Puerto Ricans are doing it, but this is a music and a culture that would not have been the same, would not have sounded the same, would not have been danced the same had Puerto Ricans not had a long history in New York City. So at that point, it was pretty clear what I was going to do after. I just wanted to be wherever Juan Flores was and be his student. So then I moved to New York and devoted my PhD thesis to the topic that eventually became the book, New York Ricans from the Hip Hop Zone.
I love that. That was beautiful. So many thoughts enter my mind. One thing is about your elder saying, this is not Puerto Rican. And then what we're fighting now is they're telling us, you weren't a part of this. And we're trying to fight like, no, this is us. I also thought when you were talking about growing up in Puerto Rico, the music that your family listened to, and then when you go to college and what you got exposed to and how that started changing your worldview and formulating you as a person. And then I'm thinking back what you're saying about your son and growing up in Albuquerque and what he's surrounded by. And I just think that's so powerful. It's like when you're growing up, and for instance, myself, I'm mixed with Irish, Italian, and Puerto Rican. My mom was Irish and Italian. I lived with her for 10 years, but then most of my life, I live in a Puerto Rican household. So I identify more with that because that's what I was surrounded by. You know, my friends and everything that I was exposed to, it was hip hop culture, Puerto Rican culture. So that's what I identify. So I just thought that that was interesting when you're sharing your journey and then thinking back to what you said about your son.
What comes to mind is like the context. One of you said before about giving agency to the person. So to me, to listen to the people who created hip hop, whether they're African American or Puerto Rican or Jamaican or Cuban, they say, and they said also in the past, they co-created it. So if the people who created it say it was co-created, why? I understand that it doesn't make sense in other contexts. In Detroit, that doesn't make sense. If the music traveled just as music and it became the soundtrack of African Americans, I can understand why there's a reluctance to say, wait, these folks, wait, why are they claiming they co-created this? And we also have to take into account the terrible anti-Blackness that exists in Puerto Rican communities and that we carry, and that it's our duty to keep fighting against. So it's also no surprise that communities that might have directly experienced anti-Blackness from one of us, then they're like, what do you mean this is yours too? So I think that it's a matter of like contextualizing, listening to the people who were there and uplifting those voices. And that's one of the reasons why whenever I get called to do something, I'm like, but you have to have the people who were there. Like they're still around. So it's really important to hear it from the folks that were there and that did it together and that are so happy to announce to the world, wait, this is not one single group created this. We did this together. And yes, it wasn't one happy family and there were struggles and there was all this tension. And we did this together. And that's really important.
Amen. And then also thinking about what Black people and Puerto Ricans, what we've endured as being colonized, slavery. So our identity has been a struggle to fight for. So when it comes to like, hip hop or things that it's our culture, so we kind of get, this is ours. Like, no, so maybe that could be explains why there's some resistance and fighting for that, because everyone's trying to take our identity. Everyone's trying to strip us from who we are. So like, there's this urge to like, but we have to come to like, no, like we're together in this.
Be patient and be humble
Yes.
and listen and uplift Black Puerto Rican voices, uplift Afro-Latino voices, because just looking at what has happened with reggaeton, it's the same story. It started as this, okay, not exclusively Black. Our barrios are really mixed, but just like salsa, just like merengue, it's this Afro-Caribbean working class music that then gets commercialized. And then who are the top artists of salsa, of reggaeton, of merengue? It's the white Puerto Ricans, if we want to call them white Puerto Ricans, or light skin, but definitely not the Black folks who were at the center of creating this. So we do it to our own expressions. Anti-Blackness is so present and so pervasive, and we really have to do our job and just try to work through it.
What do you think music can teach us about migration, race, and colonialism? I know you kind of covered a lot of it too already.
It's so funny how these arguments about where something started can get like wanting to simplify it, and it's always much more complicated. So the history of hip hop has to do with the migration of African Americans from the South to the North. It has to do the migration of different Caribbean people, Spanish speaking, English speaking, French speaking, to New York City, creating something together. And in the same way, the whole argument about reggaeton, where did it start? Is it really, should we really just say it's Jamaican dancehall translated? And the thing is that, like, why reduce it to one thing? Yes, it came from Jamaican dancehall reggae. And yes, the way people were doing reggae in Spanish in Panama, many of them Jamaican descendants, was really crucial to the development of this. And yes, Puerto Ricans had a role in shaping it a certain way. And the children of Dominicans in Puerto Rico had a really important role, and Dominicans in New York. It's such a rich history, and it's informed by colonialism. Like, all these migrations have to do with colonialism and where work was. But instead of turning it into this search for the true origins, it's a lot more interesting to just tell the many layered, complex stories. And I'm sure that as time goes on, we're going to learn about other communities that were involved in this reggaeton story and we did not yet know. So it's a matter of keeping our ears open. I think of colonialism, and I'm thinking imperialism also, and capitalism, and how all these things, yes, it's about identity, and yes, it's a product that gets commodified, and it's really complex, and we're living through it.
It's really interesting that we're talking about the effects of colonialism, imperialism, colorism, the anti-Blackness within our own communities. This has caused, what's happening now are the effects of all of this. It's the trauma, and that we're kind of living that out currently. And so, especially when you think about music as resistance, music as healing, how do you see music functioning as both scholarship, resistance, and healing in your work?
I guess it becomes scholarship when you start like teasing it apart or interviewing people and trying to gather the knowledge, the collective knowledge. But it's healing in action, especially, like, for example, the part of hip hop that most caught my heart were the dance ciphers. It's so powerful and people so into it, and you can't package it. I mean, they tried, in movies, and I don't know, break dance by the numbers or whatever it was, that I'll teach you how to do this. But B-boys and B-girls, it's such an alive experience, and it goes against this drive to consume and have the best, when it becomes, I mean, not that we don't bring our traumas to the dance floor also, but there's power and I mean, people spend hours and hours dancing and communing, let's say, with each other. It's sacred, it's beautiful, it's community building. It's fighting with each other, it's all of that. So music is a really like rich place for people like myself who want to understand, wait, why is this important, and why are these arguments, who is right? And then you go down the rabbit hole trying to explain it. It's beautiful and it's spiritual and it's healing in itself, especially when it's bringing people together in the same space, face to face. I was going to rumbas in New York City before I connected with the people of bomba. Rumba is gorgeous, gorgeous. But at least the version of rumba that I was exposed to was very male dominated. Once I found the bomba folks who were bringing their kids to the spaces where people were practicing bomba, just like the B-boys and the B-girls were bringing their kids, I was like, oh, this is like a dance cipher. Oh, and I guess there's different expressions of all these things. I'm just talking about the way I experienced it. Um, but it's really interesting that as someone who did not grow up in bomba, I got to know that kind of circle healing expression through hip hop first. And then I was able to transfer that knowledge and be excited when I found Puerto Ricans in New York doing bomba in that same way.
Do you see parallels between the role of music in community healing and the role of mothering? I know it's such a big part of your life. You mentioned your son, but I know you also do a lot of doula work. Do you see a parallel there?
Yes, but I would want to add parenting. Um, one of the sayings in Spanish that I despise is a strong word, but I will say despise, is padre es cualquiera, pero madre es solo una. So anyone can be a father, or anyone can fill the role of father, but there's only one mother. And I hated the saying. There's a plena that people sing in community and get like really choked up because it was mother. I mean, unfortunately, because of colonialism, because of capitalism, because of sexism, patriarchy, it's the mothers who take on that protector role stereotypically or too often. But if we keep saying it, we are neglecting the fathers who are doing this incredible nurturing parenting job. Um, and yeah, I just want to highlight that because it's almost a trap that we walk into sometimes, uplifting motherhood while not recognizing enough what fathers have been bringing to the table and to encourage fathers to be nurturing and to provide all this beauty and healing that has traditionally fallen on mothers. That said, there is a physical work of mothering, like birthing a little creature. And my perspective changed, and I professionally I moved from being a scholar of music to this realm. I started with midwifery and doula work, and now it's more general reproductive justice work. But it was the experience of birthing a child, having the people who were the medical experts involved be midwives who have this approach of, okay, I'm here with you and I'll give you a couple of guidelines, but I'm not about to invade your space. This is your process. It was such a powerful physical experience. And as I just said this whole thing about fathering, I was fortunate that my son's father was present and perfect for everything he did was perfect. Like I could not have asked for more. There were the midwives, and then there was my then husband, and we were a team. Like there was a point where my legs would not hold me up, and he was holding me up. So yeah, how do I turn this back around to music and healing? I don't know, but there's something about the physicality of it. Just like I was saying, that presence and interacting together is crucial to that healing and nurturing. I'm thinking of that parenting role and how that physicality and presence is so important for the nurturing of this little creature.
You don't have to bring it back to music. I think that in itself is such an important topic. I mean, as a mother, I can say giving birth was super traumatic, especially as a woman of color. I had to have an emergency delivery because I had lost all my water. And so what happened after that point was so bad that I wish at that time, my son is 22 now, so 22 years ago, I wish at that time I understood more because I think it's so important. Women of color don't get the same type of treatment. And so the things that are said inside those birthing rooms are not what other women hear and have to go through. So that work to me is incredibly important. This is what we need now. Becoming a mother, how has that shaped your connection, not just to your healing work, but just to your ancestry as well?
It's become even more urgent to know all the names. Like when my son was very young and he was already speaking, I breastfed him until he was 3 or almost 3. So he called breastfeeding nam nam. So his question was, so did you drink nam nam from Tita? Yes. So who did Tita drink nam nam from? Loling. And who did Loling drink nam nam from? Abuela Luz. And who did Abuela Luz? And there came a point where I was like, oh my God, I don't know the name. I bet. And for years, I've been collecting names, but I don't have it all handy and I don't have them all by memory. So it was this tiny little person wondering who had drunk from the breast of whom. And I was like, oh my God, I really need to, like get better at my knowledge. And we need to explore better his paternal side of the family because his dad, my son's dad, didn't grow up with his dad, but there's still some elders in that part of the family. But I think we're going to have to intentionally seek out that information because then people pass away and then, I mean, now there's all these ways to build a family tree. There's all these internet sites and blah, blah, blah. But I'd rather do it with the family that is still there, especially if my son can be part of the process of asking and who was the dad of whom and where were they living.
I did the same. I mean, I think it was when my son started asking similar questions that I was like, I need to ask my mom. I need to ask my abuelas. I need to find this out before I don't have them around because I can't answer these right now. And then that's probably when I started, that's exactly when I started building a family tree for him so that he could have these answers and his kids can have these answers. That's important as well. So now we'll take it back to music a little bit. What are the links you see between your music scholarship and reproductive justice?
Interesting. Well, first thing that pops to mind is I have struggled as a public speaker. I call it performing, whether it's public speaking or playing music live. To me, it's a performance. I'm an introvert. And when I'm going to step into a classroom, I have to call on whoever it is that speaks for me, because that is not me. um, so making music, not in private spaces, that part is easy, but making music for an audience has been a big challenge for me. And the other day I was invited to be like the opening, and I could do a poem, I could do a song for the New Mexico Breastfeeding Task Force Summit. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Okay, I'll happily accept the invitation. And it was a group of lactation workers. Many of them were doulas, and I selected songs very intentionally. One was like the spirit that is based in Sweetwater, and the other one was the spirit of fire. So I also explained the songs that I was singing. I put the lyrics so that they could sing the chorus with me. And it was just such a powerful interaction. I didn't feel like I was performing. I felt like I was sharing something that I learned from my family and also my neighbors in New York. And then I was sharing it with these people who have a very different background. Most of them were indigenous from the United States, indigenous from Mexico, Chicana. And it was just so beautiful how those simple songs having to do with natural elements and connecting it to how it impacts human bodies, like that was all the connection that was needed. I was invited because this is very common in these spaces to, open with prayer, open with song, open with poetry. And I think in many spaces that have to do with reproduction, there's this acknowledgement that art is vital to that work somehow. Weaving baskets and weaving blankets and making jewelry. It's been beautiful to connect to people here, to have something to bring that is very specific and it's from a different place, and at the same time it translates.
I love, by the way, I love Sedona. I know that's further away from you. I feel like even when you just step off the plane, that connection to the land, it's almost immediate. Like you really feel it. It's so intense. I love it there. And the indigenous, it's so strong, the indigenous culture there, that it's everything. I would live there if I could. Might be my next move.
I think it's also something about like the wide open space. I remember when I first got here, and it's so funny that my sister had a similar experience and she brought it up for me. She was like, Raquel, when you see in the distance like the mountains that are kind of gray, don't you think like it's the ocean? And that had happened to me because in my head, like you always see the ocean, especially if you're at the top of a mountain. Of course, you're going to see the ocean. But no, here it's more mountains and more mountains. But it's that wide open space is so beautiful, so unfamiliar to me in some respects, and also so beautiful.
So you're making this beautiful Boricua life in Albuquerque now. And you've spoken of so many amazing reflections on your transitions to get there. With respect for the things that as you grow, things change. Tell me about things you are gaining and things you may have lost along the way.
Well, one loss, I wish that my son had been, and not that this can't happen, but he's not growing up in a place where bomba circles are common. I mean, they're not happening. Folks have come to give workshops and concerts, but this is not like what I was exposed to in New York. And I so wish I could give that to him. He does have other beautiful things that he's exposed to. His dad is a danzante Azteca, so I feel good that he got a different cipher. So, as long as he gets the cipher, then we're good. He's experiencing that power. I miss walking. Whether I grew up in San Juan and I never had a car, so I walked everywhere. I took guaguas everywhere, and same thing in New York. We walk everywhere. Albuquerque is not a walking friendly city. And for people who don't have the walking in the city experience, that might be like, well, so what? But I hunger for it, but I have to be careful because the city is not populated like New York is populated. It's not lit like New York is lit. So the same avenue that I usually walk by myself at night on weekends, and it feels a little sketchy, but okay. The other night I went with my son and I was like, I'm not really feeling this. So, and it makes me sad. It's a great stretch of avenue that I can walk to the pharmacy. Why would I want to take my car if I can just walk for 20 minutes and go to the pharmacy? So those are experiences that I miss. I guess I refuse to say I have lost anything permanently. It's on hiatus.
Yeah, we take pauses. You shared an awesome statement in the beginning. I want to bring us back to and get your further reflection on how you came up with it. We did an episode on, this common experience of the ni de aquí ni de allá. You added and you gave us a gift. Could you re-give that gift, please, and give us a sense of how you arrived at that?
Yes. So I decided that for me, it was going to be de aquí y de allá. And if there's a third place, and in fact, this is my third place, de acá también. I was trying to just exercise my learning new music muscle. And there is this tradition from the Gulf Coast of Mexico, son jarocho. So there's a lot of people who are into son jarocho here, and I was listening to this beautiful song, something about mi bandera, and like really being from a place. I don't remember the full song right now, but it started, ya yo no quiero bandera, yo soy de aquí y soy de allá. So it's like I don't need a flag. I just need that love that comes from within and that also comes from the outside to make me feel I'm from here. If it was just my son, then that would be enough. But there's many more people I'm thankful to say. And I feel I don't know so many things about here. There's so many subtleties that I miss. There sometimes when there's a word that you never heard, but then you know what it means and then you hear it everywhere because you've been hearing it everywhere. You just don't pick it up. Like your brain kind of blocks it out. And like that, I've realized that there's all these slang words that are very specifically New Mexican, especially indigenous and Chicano, that have been flying over my head. And then maybe my son says it because he picks it up at school. And I'm like, what does that mean? And then I start hearing even other generations saying it. So I'm very aware that I've been here 14 years and I'm barely just scratching the surface. New York felt different because, yes, there's this urban aspect of the New York Puerto Rican experience, but it's a Puerto Rican experience. So that felt very familiar. This is really unfamiliar. And at the same time, it's so lovely, so beautiful. And what reminds me also of Puerto Ricans, it's that all these historical traumas should have wiped out our people long ago. So yes, there's in both communities, intense alcoholism and mental health problems, physical health problems, but people are still present, creating community, invested in helping the folks that might not be doing so well so that they have some healing. And that whole thing about la cultura cura that I had heard in New York, it's a saying here also. And it's so beautiful to see. And I love to see it like it's a miracle that we're alive. This is not just any city, and this is not just any state. And maybe I would have tried to make my home and find parallels anywhere, but this is where I'm at. And I'm so enjoying everything that I'm learning, and also being able to see the similarities.
One of the purposes is to highlight how not just the historical impact of all the things that have happened to our people, but the beautiful other side of the beauty of what happens when we resist and the products of that resistance. And you have just so beautifully highlighted how simple things like love, community, connection, and culture are as small as they are the everything. And it is so consistent amongst all the folks we have cherished conversations with. And I just thank you for highlighting such a beautiful, complex, but deeply rooted story.
And I want to go back to what Vanessa said before about the process of birthing and how that can be either a really empowering experience for mother and baby, and it starts in one path, or it can be this deeply traumatic experience that then you need all this healing to overcome. So I'm thinking of all these doulas and midwives that I'm hearing about in Puerto Rico, and I'm so grateful. I'm not in the midst of that, but I hear about it and I'm like, yes, okay. Just like there is this strong drive here, and this recognition that especially the most vulnerable and marginalized communities need health providers and birth supporters like doulas, um, to start things off well. Like it's crucial. It's an opportunity, a moment of opportunity. And I want to bring in an aspect of my work that I wasn't expecting that I'd be involved in, but I'm so grateful because I've learned so much. And it's people who are using substances while they're pregnant. And the fact that the medical providers constantly say this is a great moment to reach people that may not have been ready to turn their lives around. Like medically, it's recognized. Okay, folks, everybody wants to do good by their babies. And it's often that they can't for trauma, for, addiction, whatever it is. And to think that people who are in such a difficult position, like medical providers, recognize, okay, this is the moment to really give resources to folks because it might be like the window that they need to turn things around. Like it's like a lesson for many other cases in life. We need that opportunity and that moment and that human connection.
Hi, Raquel. I'm Jessica. I had some technical difficulties in the beginning, so I came in a little late, but I've been taking in everything. Towards the end, we like to pull out what are some of the highlights or the big things, just kind of thinking big picture for the work that we're trying to do. And I keep going back to what you said about La Cultura Cura, because in getting to better understand the origin story, as complex and layered as it is healing in several ways. It's healing yourself spiritually. It's helping paying that forward to our community and helping heal in that way. And even with what you're saying now, with this aspect of your work, how does that process of working with someone as a doula, as a midwife at that very pivotal time, I have to make a choice here. How is my life going to now lead into this next creation? And it goes back to another theme that I feel has come up throughout our conversation tonight, is that of the beauty in the evolutions. And so even in you sharing how being in Puerto Rico and then going to New York and now you're in Albuquerque, there's been a constant beauty in that evolution. but you can still smile and feel good about the new things that you've been able to hold on to, nurture, and cultivate, literally cultivate in the land, in wherever you've decided to plant yourself, wherever you've wanted to be rooted. And I think that's something that's important for all of us. I know specifically as a collective, being from the diaspora, saying how we want to have pride in our culture and community. And I know I'm BX all day, every day, but at the same time, in me saying that, it doesn't mean that I'm elevating myself against another community or that I'm better or you're not. I think that's something that sometimes we have to clarify and grapple with, because it's pride, but not at the sake of ostracizing others. That even takes it back to the beginning conversation around music and origins in hip hop. You know, it's really just understanding the complexities of the origin story and the beauty in the evolutions and different vantage points. And I want to say, like, the sofrito that every culture is adding into these new birthings, these new creations that we so lovingly made and have impacted the world with, whether we intended to or not, and accepting it and enjoying it rather than being an ostracism or territory play. Even in talking to how your roles connected in being a music scholar and then transitioning to the work that you do now and moving further into reproductive justice, there's a rhythm in that. The work that you're doing is very spiritual. When we're connecting to culture, it's a spiritual experience, and there's a rhythm in that. There's an alignment in the stars, the energy, the way you're connecting with women, with children right now in the work that you do. And hopefully in this conversation and sharing it outward, you know, we're further connecting to people in that rhythm of just the beauty that the culture holds in and of itself. What do you think would be that takeaway to the next generation? If there was some words of wisdom, some rhythm, some energy you can pass along to them, what would you say?
To look for the in-person connection. Where are the places where people are gathering and doing it together, and also curiosity about the elders that are still around. There's so many stories in our families that we need to know about and that would do us so much good. And I know that young folks, you know, it's that process of, you know, being an individual, and it's our generation now, and then there's a coming back around when they're a little bit older. So planting that seed and also letting it go. It's a process. I know I went through it, and the stuff that I thought was so annoying and such a waste of time now is some of my most treasured moments that I didn't realize it was happening there. And actually, that reminds me, being present. I have noticed that I tend to worry about the future, or, you know, get stuck in the past. And that whole thing about being really present, we're at the dinner table and no phones, and we're just talking. That's what we're doing right now. Or Tita, this is how my son calls my mom. Tita wants to tell a story that she already told. Great. Let her tell the story again, and then we'll learn the story better. Because sure, we heard it, but she might give new detail, or we might just remember it better with repetition. So yeah, being present to the folks we have around us and really treasuring that.
Listening to you say that brings up feelings for me, because I don't have my grandparents around anymore. Oh, I should have asked a couple more times, or I should have maybe dug a little deeper. So I feel it's very important for us also to share our elders with each other. You mentioning that, bringing up this idea of like the evolutions and the origin stories. How do you see yourself continuing to evolve in your current posture where you've rooted yourself?
I want to get to know this place even better. New Mexico is so beautiful in terms of people and of the place. So I really look forward to just knowing more the place and the people. And professionally, I know that each new project that I work on, it blows my mind. It's a whole new set of things that I'm learning, and I'm really enjoying that. I used to say that if somebody would bankroll me through, graduate school over and over again, like I would just do that forever.
Me
I
too.
that whole learning thing is really motivating and important. For example, I've just begun reading about foster care and adoption issues as part of reproductive justice. So again, my mind is blown and I don't understand anything and I want to read everything and talk to everybody. I want to keep this learning rhythm. I love your rhythm analogy because it feels good. It feels exciting. It feels like yeah, I feel like I'm contributing something. I have skills, writing skills that serve this larger collective that I work with, the organization that I work with. And then that's an organization that works with other people and other organizations. So it feels, it feels very satisfying to be able to feel like I'm contributing something. And I look forward to the person that my son is becoming and keep making music in the context that make the most sense. So those little ceremonies where Fidel is my son's dad. So there was a pause after the divorce, but then we became musical partners again. We do songs that we compose together at ceremonies, and that feels really, really good. So making music in that way, I think it's the way that making music makes the most sense to my life right now. I don't have capacity to come up with another band, but these smaller things are just as satisfying and less nerve-wracking.
Raquel, we appreciate you so much. Hearing your journey, sharing part of your life and who you are. You've evolved in what you're becoming. And I think that's so symbolic of just who we are as a people. This was just so beautiful. And we just thank you so much for joining us and sharing a little bit of yourself.
Thank you. I have enjoyed this so much. And now I'm wondering, do you have an episode where each of you talks about yourselves? Because I'm like, this is not fair.
Do have an episode.
Episode 1.
Good. I'm going to go to episode 1 then.
Rocky, thanks for giving us all the energy, man. It's really good connecting to you. I hope to be in a cipher with you one day, either dancing or playing. We have visions of getting this crew to Puerto Rico to do some work. Maybe we'll meet you out there in a cipher. You said some things that connect, and I recently lost my dad, and I sit with a beautiful, heavy moment, and I want to share it. The complexity that we're taking on of reaching for the history and the exposure that we want while recognizing what we've lost at the same time. I can't interview my dad. My sister watched one of these episodes and says, damn, we should have done this with Papi. But being able to hold that Boricua spirit of just hold that tension and turn it into light. And I want to thank you for giving me a little more light because it was hard to lose my dad. And this work and intentional drawing of culture together is just helping me get through it. And you're now part of this story, and I appreciate you. So thank you.
Your dad lives in you. Like he's here. Anyways, you got to do this with him.
Gracias. Hey, team, thank you. This is beautiful. Yet another great one in the box.
Thank you, Raquel.
Thank
it
you,
was
thank
amazing.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. And what wonderful questions. Joey sent me the questions that I'm like, what? I have never been asked questions like these. So thank you very much for that treat.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
All right.
Okay.
Have a wonderful night.
Thank you. You too. Bye.